Hey everyone, what's going on? If you're new to this channel, what I often talk about is how our mainstream media, our sports leagues, our told history, and many other things are all scripted with ancient knowledge. There's ancient knowledge things such as Hermeticism, and there's also Kabbalah that has a belief that God created the world by merging the letter with the number. And within that is the practice of coding numbers into words and phrases. There's also astrology, and there's just other pieces of ancient knowledge things that if you understand, you can see how the script goes along. And recently I have covered a lot about the Super Bowl and how it was scripted to all of the wall symbolism. Donald Trump calling out or addressing the nation about the wall on January 8th. And then that same day, we got a story about the wrestler Chris Jericho signing with a new wrestling league. And think about it, the walls of Jericho. Donald Trump wants to build the wall. The walls of Jericho came down because Moses freed the slaves, the Israelites, and he led them to Canaan. And then when they got to Canaan, they were led by Joshua, and then they took down the walls of Jericho to get, the land back. And I've been talking about this for a long time, but it's important to Colin Kaepernick kneeling because the 49ers play in Levi's Stadium and Moses was in the tribe of Levi. But the Nebraska Cornhuskers have been synced up to this, and I'll leave links in the description. There's a lot of information, but the Nebraska Cornhuskers play in the Sea of Red, and Moses parted the Red Sea. And they also play in Lincoln, Nebraska. Think about it. Abraham Lincoln freeing the slaves, supposedly. Moses freeing the slaves. And in these videos, what I talked about was in the Chiefs game, the Chiefs versus Patriots game to get into the Super Bowl, the person who scored the touchdown was Rex Burkhead, a former Nebraska Cornhusker, right? A former Nebraska Cornhusker. And the guy who made the winning field goal for the Rams to go into the Super Bowl was Greg Zerloin, who's from Lincoln, Nebraska. Also in the Patriots game, somebody in the comments told me that Clete Blakeman was the referee of the game, and Clete Blakeman also went to the University of Nebraska, and his referee number's number 34, just like Rex Burkhead's. And a big deal was with the number 34, the Super Bowl being on the 34th day of the year. And, Sinai equals 34, and Passover equals 34, and many, many other things with Moses are 34. Even Aries equals 34. Aries in astrology is the ram, and Moses brought in the age of Aries. And then the Rams made the Super Bowl. A ton of things, all synced up to the Nebraska Cornhuskers. And I'll get to it in a second. I do this in every video, but let's look at Gematria really quick. I want to show you why Gematria is important, and it will make a lot more sense, and then you can learn to apply this, and you can kind of follow along to what I'm going to talk about in this video. So, Gematria is the practice of coding numbers into words and phrases. And in Jewish mysticism, Kabbalah, that's where it comes from. It stems back to God creating the world by merging the letter with the number. And this is just the alphabetic order. A is 1, B is 2, up to Z, 26. If you add up G, the 7th letter, O, the 15th, D, the 4th letter, you get 26. And then this is the way the Pythagorean gematria, the mathematician, you reduce it to numerology. So O is the 15th letter. O would be 1 plus 5 equals 6. And then the other ones didn't have to be wrote down. So it would be 7 plus 6 plus 4. And you get 17. These are just the reverse way, where Z is 1 and A is 26. And then this is the reduction method. But notice, God equals 10 and also 55 in this way. And in the reverse way. And if you write out Satan equals 55 and 10 the frontwards way. And this stems back to another piece of ancient knowledge that is called Hermeticism, which has a belief that everything is the same but everything is also the opposite. And in Kabbalah, there's the tree of life that has the 10 sephirots, and that's how you understand God, through these 10 sephirots of the tree of life that help you understand God. So there's 10 of them. Even, think about how God created man, 10, and he created man out of dust, that equals 10. And who was the first man? Adam. Adam equals 10. What are the odds of all that? Adam 10, dust 10, man 10, God 10, say 10. Marilyn Manson has a song called Say 10. And he says, you say God, and I say 10. And if you look at his albums, he studies Kabbalah. He even has Kabbalah concepts within the music. Say 10, right? Think about it. He's saying to say the number 10. God equals 10, Satan equals 10. And there's many, many other examples that go along with it. So let's look at this story. And I'm going to get to why it's important to Lincoln, Nebraska, but I want to cover why SpongeBob is important as well, because SpongeBob was in the halftime show, and in the halftime show, the only little clip they had of SpongeBob was when they were blowing the trumpets, right? They were blowing these trumpets, and then the guy, Travis Scott, started singing the song Sicko Mode, which I'll explain why is important in a second, but think about it. When the walls of Jericho came down, they blew 7 ram's horns. They walked around the walls for 6 days blowing a ram's horn, which was a trumpet. And on the seventh day, the priest walked around it 7 times, blowing the ram's horn 7 times, and then the walls came down, the walls of Jericho. It was all about numbers. The Bible, specific with numbers. Why would they do that, Why is it all important about walking around it 7 times, blowing 7 ram's horns before the walls come down? And anyway, so SpongeBob, they're blowing the trumpets, and the song that there was a tribute to in this episode was called Sweet Victory, and it's written by this guy, David Glenn Isley. And, well, I didn't notice he was born on September 5th, but anyway, that's important to Travis Scott here and SpongeBob, because SpongeBob equals 95 in Gematria, and so does Travis Scott, and his real name, whatever his real name is, equals 95, and he was in the Super Bowl 9 months and 5 days after his birthday. So, interesting, this guy's born on 95 too, but when you look this guy up, it doesn't really list anything about him. It says, he did a few song stuff and whatever, and then it tells you he was in Beverly Hills 90210 and also Seventh Heaven, and then it just lists one movie, the movie Action Jackson. And what's interesting about that is if you look up the movie Action Jackson, and this is the movie with Vanity, right? Prince's ex-girlfriend who died just before Prince died, all by the numbers. But in the movie, his name is Jericho. Jericho Action Jackson, right? And if you followed what I've been saying a lot with all of this symbolism, Carl Weathers, the actor right here, is really, really important. He's in the movie Happy Gilmore, where Happy learns how to putt on the earthquake golf course in the building that falls over. It looks a lot like the Comcast Center that's in Philadelphia. I also want to point out this movie came out on Abraham Lincoln's birthday, February 12th, the 43rd day of the year. Civil War equals 43. It began in Charleston, that equals 43. Lincoln died 4 years and 3 days after the Civil War began, became president on March 4th, which in other parts of the world they write the date is 4/3. So just interesting, The guy who wrote this song, he's in the movie Action Jackson, that is about, the main character's name is really Jericho. And then they're blowing these trumpets, something that I was talking about. A lot of people will say the trumpets of Revelation and whatnot, but with the ram symbolism, it's more synced up to Moses, right? And Think about Moses and the 10 commandments, right? The 10 commandments that God gave Moses, right? And also think about how there's 39 chapters in the Old Testament. If you add out the word 10, it equals 39. But anyway, let's look at this SpongeBob stuff. So this SpongeBob episode, the reason it was aired was because the creator of SpongeBob had just recently died on November 26th. Just want to point it out. He died on November 26th. And they signed a petition. A bunch of fans signed a petition because they wanted SpongeBob to be a tribute at the Super Bowl halftime show. And they wanted him to play that clip of that song. Or they wanted Maroon 5 to play that song called Sweet Victory. But anyway, the episode that they're talking about is called Band Geeks, and it just so happens to be the 35th episode of SpongeBob. 35th episode. And this guy died on November 26th, which just so happens to be the day that leaves 35 days in the year. And he also just so happened to die 3 months and 5 days after his birthday. What are the odds, 3 months, 5 days after his birthday on the day that leaves 35 days in the year. And then the episode they do as a tribute to him is the 35th episode in the Super Bowl. And when you go watch the SpongeBob video of the clip of where they perform this song at the Super Bowl, or at the Bubble Bowl, they focus on this guy in the crowd a lot. The only real number you can see is this guy and this guy who's wearing number 20. But they show this guy like a lot more. Number 35, and they show it more than once. 35, so they show these clips more than once within this episode. The guy wearing number 35 in the 35th episode, and they show it 2 times even. So that's interesting too, because Tom Brady in Gematria equals 35. And this whole Super Bowl was all scripted to Tom Brady too. Tom Brady equals 35 in Gematria. And this episode also, it aired just 4 days before 9/11/2001, when Tom Brady came out of nowhere and he got to start playing when he played against the Jets, right? And then that's just after 9/11. Then the Patriots come out of nowhere and go on to win the Super Bowl. We also had George Bush sign the Patriot Act. Also, you can't forget the New York Yankees, who came out of nowhere and upset the 116 regular season win Seattle Mariners 41 days after 9/11, which I'll get to in a second. It's really important here, but anyway, let's move on here. So when you go and watch the clip of the SpongeBob thing happening at the Super Bowl, they just blow the trumpets, and then this fireball comes from the sky and it crashes into the Super Bowl stadium, and then this guy, Travis Scott, starts singing his song Sicko Mode. And what's interesting about that right away is if you look up the song Sicko Mode, the single just so happened to release on August 21st. And if you go up here, notice what day that the guy who created SpongeBob was born on. August 21st. So Sicko Mode, the single, came out 3 months and 5 days before the guy from SpongeBob died. And then they do this 35 tribute to him. And then he starts singing that song Sicko Mode right after SpongeBob blows the trumpets. And it also came out on this album called Astro World that came out on Tom Brady's 41st birthday. What are the odds? Tom Brady equals 35. Anyway, look at this. So you go from this guy's birthday, Travis Scott, to the Super Bowl this year. It's 9 months and 5 days. Also 40 weeks. And look what his name is in Gematria. 40. Look what Sicko Mode is. 40. Look what SpongeBob is. 40. SpongeBob also 95. Sicko Mode also equals 149, which is the 35th prime number. Right? So they start playing Sicko mode, that equals 149, the 35th prime number, you know, and it came out, or the single came out 3 months and 5 days before the SpongeBob guy died. The SpongeBob episode aired, was the 35th episode. You know, that guy died on the day that leaving 35 days in the year. You cannot make that up. So, you know, also this guy's full name, Jocks Berman Webster II, it equals 95, just like SpongeBob. And remember, this is 9 months, 5 days after his birthday. The word trumpet equals 40 as well, just like SpongeBob and all these other ones. Trumpet. Let's look at SpongeBob really quick up here. I just want to show you what I'm talking about yet again. You know, I know there's all these different numbers, but there's 4 different numbers here. SpongeBob equals 40, 95, and also 41. You know, the word Super Bowl equals 41 in Gematria. Think about, oh, what's his name? Adam Levine. Adam Levine, the singer of Maroon 5. His name equals 41. You wonder why he's singing at the Super Bowl this year. The reason he was singing at the Super Bowl this year was because his band is called Maroon 5. That equals 53, and it was Super Bowl 53, right? And then also 118, just like Patriots, just like Tom Brady. See how there's an overlap here? 118. The other guy who performed at the Super Bowl was Big Boy, who equals 35 and 118, right? So synced up to the Patriots. Oh, crap. Remember how the Super Bowl this year, too, the game was sealed after the Gostkowski kick of 41 yards. And that kick just so happened to leave a minute 12 on the clock. Let me find the picture here. He kicks this 41-yard field goal, and there's a minute 12 left on the clock. And let's look at the word Super Bowl again. Super Bowl, 41, also 112, right? Tom Brady's currently 41 years old, wins the Super Bowl off this kick, right? And then they scored 13 points, right? The 13th prime number just so happens to be 41. The 6th prime number is 13, and Tom Brady got his 6th ring, right? Just like Bill Belichick got his 6th head coaching ring, and he's also 66 years old. And if you write out the word 13, it equals 45 two ways, you know? Just like if you write out New England, that also equals 45, and Donald Trump, the 45th president, who's a fan of the New England Patriots, and Mike Pence also equals 45 and 45, and everyone is talking about how it's connected to the book of Daniel, Daniel 8, where the one-horned goat beats the two-horned ram. Well, it makes sense because Daniel equals 45, and, you know, Daniel gets his knowledge about a lot of his visions from the angel Gabriel, and Gabriel equals 45. And I'll talk about that later on as we move along, because that's also important to some things that I talked about when the Falcons lost to the Patriots in the Super Bowl. In Super Bowl 51, it was important to Gabriel, a bunch of stuff that was going on, the angel Gabriel. Also, in regards to Donald Trump, just go read Daniel 11. Daniel 11, it talks about the richest king, the 4th king. Daniel 11. You know, there's the 3 kings that will arise in Persia, and then the 4th, who will be far richer than all of the others. When he has gained power by his wealth, he will stir up everyone against the kingdom of Greece. And just think about Donald Trump, the puppet that he is. You know, lots of people who support Trump think that he's going against the New World Order and everything else, but he's truly just a puppet. He won the election, the selection, absolutely scripted by the numbers. The guy who wants to build the wall wins on the anniversary of, you know, the announcement of the Berlin Wall coming down, and the word wall equals 48. Donald Trump equals 48. Pence became the 48th vice president. The Mexican-American War came to an end in the year 1948. He won the biggest election upset since the year 48. when Harry S. Truman upset Thomas E. Dewey, and that's all connected to North Korea. Harry S. Truman, the president during the Korean War. That's why it's important that Donald Trump addressed the nation about the wall on Kim Jong-un's birthday on January 8th. So then they come out with the TV show with LeBron James called The Wall, and the movie called The Great Wall with Matt Damon ended on the 48th day after Trump was elected. All synced up by the numbers. So just think about it. Donald Trump's the richest president. Daniel 11's talking about the richest king using his money to stir up the people. And then the fifth king, the mighty king, he's the one where all the bad stuff really starts happening. So just wanted to point that out. I've talked about that previously, but like people talking about how it's synced up to Daniel 8. Well, Daniel 11 seems a lot more interesting to me in regards to Donald Trump. Anyway, let's move on here. If you go from the day that this SpongeBob episode came out, or the day, September 7th, and keep in mind it was in 2001, just before 9/11 happened, and then later that year, the Rams and the Patriots played in the Super Bowl, right? And then now we have the Rams and the Patriots yet again. But if you go from that day to the day they played in the Super Bowl, which was also on February 3rd of 2002, it's 149 days, the 35th prime number. Yet again, that number 35, and why it's important. And, it's something I've talked about all summer. It seems like a lot of times when I talk about something during the summer that I think is synced up to the baseball season, it's always synced up to the Super Bowl. So I've been doing this for only a limited amount of time. I wasn't born into this and trying to figure it from the outside in, but it seems that every time I'm talking about something during the summer, that theme is connected to what is going on within the Super Bowl, right? And a big thing was, too, the Cleveland Indians. And Cleveland is really important to this narrative because it was founded by Moses Cleveland, right? And a lot of the stuff with the Browns and Bill Belichick, it all goes back to Cleveland. And I even talked about in the summer how if the Indians didn't go to the World Series, the big connection with the Indians was that the curse of the Boston Red Sox, the curse of the Bambino, and keep in mind that Babe Ruth, he died in the year 48, and just before the Indians won their last World Series. They won it in the year 48, and Cleveland equals 48 in Gematria. Think about all that with the wall. And then they were in the World Series, and they lost just before Donald Trump won the rigged election. Also, Trump gave his national convention in Cleveland just after King James came back from down 3-1 and won the NBA Finals on the real King James's birthday, right? And then Trump gives his national convention in Cleveland. Then the Indians go on to the World Series, and Terry Francona, the coach of the Indians, he's the coach who broke the curse of the Bambino for the Boston Red Sox. Think about Boston, how it syncs up to the Patriots. Also, Michael Jordan, who's born on the 48th day of the year, 217. New England Patriots equal 217. That's also the day the War of 1812 came to an end. That's synced up to all of this. But Michael Jordan played baseball for the Birmingham Barons, and the coach was Terry Francona, the coach of the Cleveland Indians, the coach who broke the curse of the Boston Red Sox and the curse of the Bambino after 86 years, right? And curse of the Bambino equals 86, and they almost beat it in the year 86. And the Indians are cursed by Rocky Colavito. And what's interesting about all of them 86s is that his 86th birthday this year is on August 10th, which is when Tisha B'Av begins. And that is the Jewish holy day in remembrance of the destruction of the two temples. And think about that in regards to the two towers during 9/11. And if you read out Tisha B'Av in Jewish Gematria, it equals 911. Just like Al-Qaeda terrorist attack equals 911 in Jewish Gematria. So it's definitely all interrelated to what I am talking about. Anyway, the SpongeBob episode to the Super Bowl, it was also, it's 149 days, which is the 35th prime number, but 149 in relation to 9/11. It reminds me a lot that George Bush and John Kerry, the two presidential candidates that were running against each other, were both members of Skull and Bones that only accepts, what, like 15 members a year, and two of the people running for president are both members of Skull and Bones. What are the odds of that? And Skull and Bones equals 41 in Gematria, and also 149. So, interesting how it syncs up, and the reason 41 is so important is because Al-Qaeda equals 41, airplanes equal 41. 9/11 happened on a date numerology of 41. 9 plus 11 plus 20 plus 1, 41. I wrote 51 in here. It's supposed to be 41, but remember how it was all about terror, right? Terror in Gematria equals 41, just like USA, you know. And think about how the Patriots just won with 13 points. The 13th prime number is 41. 13 colonies, that's what they were named after. The 13 colonies in the Revolutionary War. Hopefully this works here. My computer's like going slow all of a sudden, but 13 colonies, 13 stripes, and so on. Also, think about George H.W. Bush just dying too. George H.W. Bush, the 41st president, he's the guy who gave the New World Order speech exactly 11 years to the day before 9/11 happened. Right? 11 years to the day. And in Gematria, NWO equals 11. Think about how it was in the 11th state with the buildings that look like the giant 11. And the first flight to hit was flight AA:11. A is the first letter, 11, 11. He gives that speech 11 years to the day before 9/11 in the 11th state. The buildings look like an 11, and just think about it. It's all coded by the numbers. Flight 77 hit the 77-foot tall Pentagon exactly 77 minutes after takeoff on the 77th meridian. And if you write out September 11th, it equals 77 in Gematria. And if you write out World Trade Center, it equals 77 in Gematria, And many, many other things. George H.W. Bush, I believe, became the leader of the CIA in the year 77, and the Pentagon just so happened to be constructed in the year 41, which was 77 years ago, which is also interesting. And it was constructed on 9/11. 9/11 of the year 41. 77 years ago. What are the odds? So, just fitting that George Bush would die. Another reason that this episode's important to 9/11, so it releases just before 9/11, but the episode is called Band Geeks, that equals 68, and the song was called Sweet Victory, that equals 68. And 9/11 happened 68 days after George W. Bush's birthday. World Trade Center construction began on August 6th, 86 or 68 of the year 68. 911 was made the emergency dialing code by AT&T in the year 68. AT&T equals 41 in Gematria. And George Bush graduated Yale Skull and Bones in the year 68. So it's definitely really important to 9/11 with that SpongeBob episode. Also, back in the summer, I made a post and a video about Ichiro Suzuki, the Seattle Mariners player who supposedly didn't know who Tom Brady was, and it was odd because he said it the year before, and then they came out with a video in 2018, even though he said it in 2017. But Ichiro Suzuki came into the Major League Baseball League in 2001, the same year Tom Brady came out of nowhere. And when 9/11 happened, he played for the Seattle Mariners, who had 116 regular season wins, and then the after 9/11 happened, 41 days later, the Yankees upset the Mariners, and the Yankees went on to the World Series. 41 days later, just so happened to be Ichiro Suzuki's birthday that day, too. So they upset him on Ichiro Suzuki's birthday. And way back here, I even talked about how it was synced up to Tom Brady. You know, Tom Brady's going to turn 41 years old. The word Super Bowl equals 41. Think of, all of this stuff with 9/11. I was documenting it all year long. So, Seattle Mariners equal 179, which is the 41st prime number. Then they got upset by the New York Yankees. It was also 1 month and 11 days. 9/11 leaves 111 days in the year. New York equals 111 in Gematria. So, just a joke. I noticed too that Ichiro Suzuki, when you look up Ichiro Suzuki here, he's also currently 45 years old, which is interesting because remember how Tom Brady says he's going to play till the age of 45, and then they just won with 13 points, and 13 equals 45, just like New England, and so on, right? And Ichiro Suzuki is 45 years old, and he's going to be playing again next year, supposedly. So Tom Brady says he's going to play till he's 45. If you read out 41 as words, it equals 35, right? Just like the SpongeBob thing in the beginning. And also 118, just like Patriots, just like Tom Brady. With all those 35 and how I was talking about how it's connected to the Nebraska Cornhuskers, it sticks out to me because Nebraska equals 35 in Gematria. Nebraska equals 35. And today, the day after the Super Bowl, and something I didn't realize, another connection to Nebraska, right? Sean McVay, right? The coach of the Rams. He became the youngest coach after when he joined the Rams, the youngest coach to coach in the NFL, and he surpassed Lane Kiffin, who was from Lincoln, Nebraska, and his father played for, or he was the coach of Nebraska when they got the black shirts and whatnot. So it was once again another connection to Nebraska. That's why Bill Belichick was important, because he became the youngest coach at one point in time when he began coaching the Cleveland Browns, and then the Cleveland Browns dissolved for a few years, and they became the Baltimore Ravens, and that was the same year that he got fired from the Browns. And then the Browns made their comeback the same year the Rams went on to win the Super Bowl 34. But anyway, today on ESPN, we got the Rams quarterback coach, one day after the Super Bowl. He's signing to be the head coach of the Cincinnati Bengals, right? And of course, Zach Taylor, he's a former quarterback who played at the Nebraska Cornhuskers, right? What are the odds? And he's 35 years old, and this story comes on the 35th day of the year, and Nebraska equals 35. And a long time ago, I talked about how 9/11 had this interesting connection to the Nebraska Cornhuskers because they have the black shirts, their defense, and black shirts in Gematria equal 41. And they throw up the skull and crossbones, right? Reminding us of this, Skull and Bones Society, right? They throw up the skull and crossbones. Skull and Bones equal 41. Black shirts 41. They play in Memorial Stadium. Memorial equals 41. Red Inn equals 41. Even Husker fans equal 41. There's a bunch of other 41s that I forgot about. I didn't even write them in here. But the coach, when they became the black shirts, was Bob Devaney. His name equals 41. He died on May 9th. If you're out May 9th, it equals 41. And that's why it's important to Sean McVay and Lane Kiffin, because Lane Kiffin was born on May 9th, 5'9". 5'9", also a number important to the Civil War. It supposedly ended on 5'9", and Abraham Lincoln's birthday 59 days before it began, and slave equals 59, and Negro equals 59, and cotton picker equals 59, and that's why Black History Month normally ends on the 59th day of the year, When you write the super N word and you break it down, it is 5 plus 9 plus 7 plus 7 plus 5 plus 9. Even has the 5 plus 9, the 59 on the front and the back. Rodney King equals 59. Mike Tyson equals 59. James Buster Douglas equals 59. Michael Jordan equals 59. Obamacare, the list goes on. AIDS supposedly founded in the Belgian Congo in the year 59. Belgian Congo equals 59. Booker T. Washington equals 59. They had the guy John Brown from the Harper's Ferry raid that happened in the year 59. His name equals 59. Pretty sure he was born on the date of 5/9. Eli Whitney supposedly died at the age of 59. So, synced up to the Civil War here. Same stuff I'm talking about. Moses freed the slaves. Lincoln supposedly freed the slaves. The War of 1812 was really important into all of this as well. And also the Mexican-American War. They really coded a lot of these old wars. And what's interesting about this guy's name is his name is Zach Taylor. And a long time ago, I documented about the president, Zachary Taylor, who is the only president who died at the age of 65. And his name, Zachary Taylor, just so happens to equal 65. He's the only president to die at the age of 65. And he's famous for the Battle of the Buena Vista, or Buena Vista, however you pronounce it, and that was a battle during the Mexican-American War. And think about that in regards to Donald Trump and the Mexican-American War ending in the year 48. But that's how he became the president, because of the Battle of Buena Vista and whatever, and the Mexican-American War. It's really important to building the wall. And in 2016, we had the death of a kid who got ate by an alligator at Buena Vista, Florida, or something, Lake Buena Vista, Florida. Or that's what they originally said it was, in Lake Buena Vista, Florida. And his name was Lane Graves, that equals 41. And, like Super Bowl. And he was from the Omaha, Lincoln area, Elkhorn, Nebraska, a suburb of Omaha, right? And he just so happened to die on Donald Trump's birthday. He got ate by the alligator, but if you looked it up, the last time that someone had got ate by an alligator, let me find it here. The last time in that year that someone had got killed by an alligator was on 6/5 of 2016, 65. And look what their name was, Richard Zachary Taylor. What are the odds of that, right? And they got ate on 6/5, and the president was the only one who died at the age of 65, and his name equals 65. Then this kid dies on Donald Trump's birthday. Zachary Taylor, he died 138 days, when he was in office when he died too. 138 days before his birthday. Donald Trump at Gematria just so happens to equal 138. Pretty sure the word alligator equals 100 or 41 too. Alligator. Maybe I'm wrong. Alligator equals 41, just like Lane Graves, the kid who got ate by the alligator at Buena Vista or whatever. I mean, who knows? I mean, I feel sorry if that kid really did die, but it's all by this code still. It doesn't really matter, it's all scripted. And anyway, the Mexican-American War just so happened to come to an end on February 3rd of 1848. Think about that. February 3rd. That's when the Super Bowl was played yesterday. February 3rd. It was the 171st anniversary of the Mexican-American War coming to an end, right? Also, another interesting thing that I didn't write in here, but I have written it before about the Society of the Cincinnati. So this guy is the Cincinnati Bengals coach now. Zach Taylor, the Cincinnati Bengals coach. If you look up Zachary Taylor, he just so happened to be, let me find it here. After the Battle of Buena Vista, he was elected as an honorary member of this society called the Society of the Cincinnati. What are the odds of that, right? And then this was just, when I was talking about this was right around the time we had a Harambe at the gorilla at the Cincinnati Zoo dying and whatever. So, just what are the odds? Zach Taylor goes to the Cincinnati Bengals. He has the same name as one of the presidents who, after the Battle of Buena Vista and the Mexican-American War, he became an honorary member of the Society of the Cincinnati. I mean, it's just a joke, you know what I mean? That's what it's all about. Zach Taylor. I thought about that a long time ago, too, because I was following this Nebraska courthouse stuff, and I knew that guy was connected to I knew he's connected to the president named Zach Taylor, and then lo and behold, now he's joining the Cincinnati Bengals as the head coach, and then that guy joins that guy's in the Society of the Cincinnati. It's just so ridiculous. Also, the Bengals are important because the Bengals were formed by the guy named Paul Brown, and Paul Brown was the longtime coach of the Cleveland Browns, and then he was fired by the Cleveland Browns coach Art Modell, and then he later started the Cincinnati Bengals. So I was thinking about 9/11 in regards to Lincoln and Nebraska, and I will never forget the day of 9/11, the night before. It was a Monday night. I came back. I lived in Council Bluffs, Iowa, which is right across the river from Omaha, Nebraska, and we went to a made-up JV football game. It was right after I had first graduated. It was my first year of college. So the people I lived with, we went back to our hometown an hour away for, a lot of times. And we went back to this JV football game. And on the way back, we saw a UFO. I don't know what it was, if it was a drone or what. I'll explain it the same way every time, but it was a floating metal H with a bunch of lights on it. And we were like, what in the world is going on? And keep in mind, this is before cell phones, and all you had was like disposable cameras. Couldn't even take a picture of it. And it was literally only as high as a telephone pole. And it was in the smallest town ever called Beebe-Town, Iowa. It's like 4 houses. And, well, it may be a little bit more than that now, but it's very small. And we floored it, and this thing, like, followed us. Like, it stayed right to the side of us. We even stopped the car because it was going so fast, and it just stopped, and it hovered right to the side of us. Like, we stopped the car, and we just were like, what is this thing? And it just stopped in midair, and it followed us, right? Like, it just hovered there while we were outside of the car looking at it. And then we kept driving, and there was lights everywhere in the sky, dude. All over in the sky. And then all of a sudden, that one that was following us, it just turned into a ball of light, and it just disappeared. And you don't have to believe what I'm saying, but I'm telling you, it just disappeared out of thin air, like the fastest thing ever. And then there was just lights all over in the sky. And I've been obsessed with that day forever. But I remember going back to our apartment, and we even like put shit in front of the window and everything else. Like, and I slept in my friend's room and we called his dad on our calling card, and his dad thought we were eating mushrooms, which I wish we kind of were sometimes, but we weren't. We were completely sober, even like wasn't drinking, wasn't doing anything, completely sober. And that happened. And the next day I woke up and I turned on the TV before I had to go to school, and we saw the second plane supposedly hit on 9/11, right? And moral of the story, since living in this area, I remember that after 9/11 happened, George Bush, the first thing that he did was he came to Offutt Air Force Base, which is in the Omaha area, just it's in Bellevue or whatever, just south of Omaha, in the Omaha area. And it's only an hour away from Lincoln, Nebraska. So just interesting that he would come there right after doing his whole My Pet Goat book reading, and then I Pet Goat, right? My Pet Goat book reading in Florida. He comes to Offutt Air Force Base, and Dick Cheney just so happens to be born in Lincoln, Nebraska, his vice president, Dick Cheney. And also remember, after 9/11 happened, there's that big interview you can find on the internet. Just type in Bob Kerrey, 9/11 Bob Kerrey, one of the senators of Nebraska who was on the 9/11 commission. And it's absolutely planned. That's what I'm telling you. Like, the way that they edit this video, it was on purpose, but he says that 9/11 was a 30-year conspiracy, but they want you to see it because he even says like article something, section 33. They put all this in front of your face for a reason, It's not that they didn't want you to discover this. They wanted people to know about this for whatever the reason, you know. Possibly it's because of all the Donald Trump stuff. We got Alex Jones and all these other people who are following all these people who aren't real truth people, right? And they want this overthrow of whatever is happening so they can create something new and people don't think that it's something new, you know, and it's not coded by the system when it truly is, you know. So I don't know what the full meaning is, but Bob Carey, another guy who was from Lincoln, Nebraska. So it's important to 9/11. Also, 9/11 is 145 days before the Super Bowl this year and also in 2001. And Nebraska equals 145 in reverse. And Nebraska equals 35. The word Catholic equals 35 and 145. It's just something to think about. JFK, the first Catholic Pope, right? He's the 35th president. There's a lot of stuff that has been coded to Donald Trump and JFK and so on. So Bob Carey was also the 35th senator of Nebraska, right? 35th senator. Also, the band Maroon 5. And I don't know how I didn't remember this either, but I just never put it together. But I went to, when I moved to Arizona, I went to school at the Conservatory of Recording Arts and Sciences. And, you know, it's recording studio stuff, live sound, and whatever. And at the end of it, you had to do an internship. And they said they really didn't have any connections in this area. And I had a bunch of financial reasons and some other just personal reasons and whatever that I didn't want to do it. And but I had to move back to Iowa is what I meant. And then they said maybe the only place they could hook me up with is at Saddle Creek Records. And I mean, I didn't even have the money. I had like $0 at this time. Like I owed a bunch of money in credit cards, and they put a lien on my bank account, and I was like minus 4,000 some dollars in the bank, and I got all these overdrafts and whatever. I had no money to even drive anywhere, you know what I mean? So I moved back in with my parents and whatever. I had no time to really. I couldn't drive to Omaha or wherever Saddle Creek was. So, but anyway, moral of the story is that I just remember that Maroon 5 had this connection to Saddle Creek, and I knew there was something connected to Lincoln, Nebraska with Maroon 5. And Maroon 5, of course, did the halftime show, right? And the reason Maroon 5 got popular, really, was because the guy from Lincoln, Nebraska named James Valentine had joined the band. They were called some other band, like Kim's something. They changed their name to Maroon 5, and this guy joined, and he went to school with John Mayer, and then John Mayer heard one of their songs and invited them to go on tour with John Mayer, and then all of a sudden they blew up, right? So the guy from Lincoln, Nebraska is the reason that Maroon 5 really blew up, and he's the guy who joined the band when they first became Maroon 5, so yet another connection to Lincoln, Nebraska, I guess. And his name equals the same as Lincoln, Nebraska, 150. So hopefully all that makes sense. I should make a separate video on this. It's really not related. This Daniel 8 stuff is really important too, though, because, like I said, Daniel equals 45, Gabriel equals 45, but in 2017, a big thing that I had followed, I even made a bunch of videos talking about the angel Gabriel, and I was interesting. My name was Daniel, and I kept getting all of these things shown to me, and my uncle, a big thing, all year I talked about how I thought the Indians and the Cubs would be in the World Series because of all this stuff that was going on in the mainstream media and how it connected to the area that I lived in, and the death of Prince, and the Colts bought the Prince's Yellow Cloud guitar, and the town I live in killed the last keeper of the sacred pole of the Omaha people. His name was Chief Yellow Smoke, and there's a lot of stuff that went along with it, but when the Cubs won the World Series, there was a story on September 29th about 114 people being injured in a Hoboken train wreck. And Hoboken is where the first ever Major League Baseball game was played. And before this, I was talking about how the Cubs were in their 114th season being called the Cubs. And I can't even remember it. They were in their 114th season being called the Cubs. And if they won the World Series, it would have been their 114th win of the season. And also the word tie in Gematria equaled 114. And the same day we got this Hoboken train wreck with 114 people being injured, the Cubs tied the Pittsburgh Pirates. And the Pittsburgh Pirates were important because they equal 228 in Gematria. And the Cubs had picked up Aroldis Chapman, who was born on 2/28, and he was born on the exact day that Harvey Keene died. And Harvey Keene was the guy who got traded for Rocky Colavito, who had cursed the Cleveland Indians. And anyway, the Cubs went on to win the World Series on their 114th win and their 114th season being called the Cubs. And I also talked about how the last time that there was a tie was in 2005 when the Houston Astros tied the Cincinnati Reds 114 days before the World Series began, and then the Houston Astros made the World Series, right? Once again, the word tie, but they lost to the Chicago White Sox. And in that same year, my uncle had went to a game on 8/8. He took his wife to a game on 8/8 of 2005, and that was his wedding anniversary. And they went to the Cincinnati Reds, the team that Houston had beat or tied 114 days before the World Series. And later that year, in 2017, my uncle was a Cubs fan too. He died on January 14th in a mysterious car crash that really makes no sense to this day. And moral of the story, he was a fourth-degree Knight of Columbus, and I knew that was important. And he also, a couple weeks before he died, and he had cancer, but he ended up dying from a car wreck, driving 5 miles off the road in the wrong direction. It just makes absolutely no sense. And he dies at the Jesuit hospital. But in the same day that he died, I got a letter in the mail with $300 in it telling me to love Jesus or whatever. And just some synchronicity things. And losing my train of thought here, but the number 114 was really important to that. And he gave me the Dan Marino jersey just a couple weeks before he died. And I was like, I wonder if there's something to do with the Knights of Columbus. How is that important? And I looked up Columbus, and I found out he supposedly discovered America on the date of 10/12. And Dan Marino, there was a story about, an actor that was connected to the Miami Dolphins, and something to do, I can't remember what it was. He died like 10 months and 12 days before or something. And I was like, 10/12, 10/12. My grandpa, who was my uncle's dad, his birthday was 10/12. And a bunch of other things. It just kept showing me this 10/12 over and over. 10/12, the date of 10/12. So some other stuff led me to watch the Simpsons episode. And I watched season 10, episode 12, 10/12 of the Simpsons. And it just so happened to be the only episode that Dan Marino was in. Dan Marino jersey that my uncle gave me. Earlier in the season, the Dolphins, first game of the season, they lost the game, I believe it was, or they won with a score of 10-12, right? And I was like, 10-12, 10-12, what is going on with this? And in the episode of The Simpsons, the Falcons lose the Super Bowl, or it was aired on the same day the Falcons lost the Super Bowl 33, but it was also the same day the very first ever Family Guy aired. And that Family Guy episode starts off with a Brady Bunch skit. Think about Tom Brady. Then Tom Brady ends up beating the Falcons. Simpsons said that the Falcons were going to lose the Super Bowl. But anyway, I went to Daniel 10:12. Just want to point this out here. There's a whole bunch of stuff that it was pointing. You have to go back. Maybe I'll leave some links, but I was like, what is the deal with Daniel 10:12? That's Daniel 12. And I looked up Revelation 10:12 too. but I went to the book of Daniel just because my name was Daniel. And when you go to Daniel 10:12, it says, "Then he continued, 'Do not be afraid, Daniel. Since the first day that you set your mind to gain understanding and to humble yourself before your God, your words were heard, and I have come in response to them.'" Like, what are the odds, All of these things with the number 10:12 and the book of Daniel 10:12 is all about how Gabriel came to help Daniel understand what is going on with his visions and whatever else, right? And just all of these synchronicity things were happening. So just saying, there's something bigger in this world. These people who script the sports leagues and script our media, they understand how to control our minds, and they understand this knowledge, They understand what Gabriel truly is and what, possibly it is. Possibly there really is, angels and demons and whatever that are manipulating our minds and whatever else. But the people who are ruling over us, they understand this, and they know how to, work this system that involves all of this stuff that is going on. I don't think it's just angels and demons. There's definitely people that are involved with what is going on. And, just tell you, like, what are the odds of this? So I was talking about the book of Daniel back then. And I told you about the book of Daniel 11 earlier in this video, so I don't need to re-explain that. But just wanted to point out that Daniel 8 was important, and Daniel 12 or 10 was important, and Daniel 11 is also important to Donald Trump. So the book of Daniel really is really important to a lot of the things that are going on, especially in connection with the Patriots. So, well, I'm going to end the video there. One last thing, though, in regards to, just thinking about the Abrahamic religions and whatever else. Gabriel is also supposedly the messenger that gave Muhammad the Quran, right? He revealed the Quran to Muhammad in Islam, man. Look at Gabriel and Gematria. Gabriel 54, and look at, not Muhammad, but Islam. Islam 54. And Muhammad is interesting too. Muhammad equals 74, just like Jesus, just like cross, just like gospel, just like Messiah, and so on, just like Joshua, just like Lucifer. But remember Muhammad Ali? Remember Muhammad Ali died on 6/3? Muhammad Ali equals 96, and the Prophet Muhammad supposedly lived to be the age of 63, and, the word Freemason equals 96. The Freemasons obviously wrote the King James Bible, and the reason that sticks out so much to me is because when you look up the Quran or whatever, right, we'll look it up really quick. Muhammad Quran has 114 chapters, by the way, too. The Quran has 114 chapters. Think about my uncle dying on 114. This big number, 114. World War equals 114. Pearl Harbor, 114. Holocaust, 114. But something about 96. Can't remember what it is with Muhammad and the Quran and Gabriel. I believe he gives him the first 96 chapters. Let me find it here. Muhammad's first revelation, Gabriel appears before him and commands him to recite the first lines of chapter 96 of the Quran, So his first revelation, he has to recite the first lines of chapter 96. Just interesting, Freemason equals 96 and so on. Also, if you write out 63 as words, it equals 54, just like Gabriel, just like Islam. Think about how Muhammad supposedly died at the age of 63. Let's point it out here. Well, it says 62 or 63 now, but I never looked at the date before. June 8th. Well, that's interesting if it's June 8th. Definitely interesting, but whatever, we'll leave the video there. Just like I said, I want to show all these connections. SpongeBob, Nebraska. It's something important. It's going to be coming up in this year, I guarantee it. Every year, the things that I talk about, whether I'm wrong or right about who wins the game, there is something important to what happens within the year and how the symbolism is important. And if you understand Gematria, you can understand why these patterns exist a little bit better, and you can see the pattern that much better with, so Gematria it's not the most important thing, but it really is too, because if you don't understand Gematria, you're not going to understand the patterns as well. There's tons of patterns, and I'm sure there's more to learn. There's obviously more to learn, and that's what I'm trying to do every single day. Learn more. I want to learn how to understand these things that are going on in my own life, and how I can learn to apply this, and how I can better the world with this system. But we don't have enough people awake right now to what is going on. We need more people to be awake to collectively understand this knowledge and use it for a better way. And all these people in my videos talk about how it's pointless to know all this information. You're absolutely wrong. It's absolutely wrong. It's not pointless because these things are happening every time I talk about something. I talk about the space theme going on, and then 2 weeks later we get the death of John Glenn. Then another month later we got the death of Eugene Cernan. Just so many times I've talked about certain things, and then the exact same thing I'm talking about, it becomes a major mainstream story and whatnot. So I'm right on track. We just got to keep studying this, to keep figuring it out, exposing it every single day. Maybe more people will catch on, and then we can, make this world, it's never going to be perfect. We're never going to have some type of utopia, but it could be a lot better of a world. So have a good one. Peace.